What's up, David?
Hey man, I'm scared of that look. No.
What's
Like,
going
wait a
on,
minute.
sir?
Wait a minute. The all black look. I'm good. I love it.
Black is
You
back
doing,
on.
man? You look wonderful, dude.
Thank you. I'm trying to do sound-wise, sounds okay?
Sounds good. How about myself?
Yeah, nice and
Great, great. Great. How you doing, man? The questions look okay? You just went to mute.
yep, I
There
just
you go.
went through them and went through them again.
Yeah,
You know, I want to try to make this as you know, as non-scripted as possible. But
sure.
of course,
sure.
I've got some, you know, some answers in there that are
Yeah.
obviously
I
going to
think
be.
I think I've got I think I've accomplished a reasonably decent interview style. So I'm talking from Brooklyn.
Yeah, no, you're
So
good.
yeah, I mean, you know,
No, the questions are good. Appreciate it.
great. I've added a couple, but nonetheless, I've added a couple questions, but nonetheless, they are you know, we know what we're going to talk about, and you know, we know what we're going to focus on. Hey, Bev, right? You on mute, Bev. Well, you're still on mute, but that's I'm glad you're here. How's that?
Hey, David, can you hear me now?
I sure can. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I cannot complain. I cannot complain.
Good. Hey, David, I'm going to be kind of in and out today, but I'm still going to be on the call.
Okay. You want to ask this guy questions right now and get your questions in before anybody else? You want to get them and dig them? So you know that this is all focused on folks who have ambitions or desires to be in the security industry at whatever level.
Right.
And so I just bring folks on who occupy these roles, these executive roles, these decision-making roles, so they can sort of tell, you know, those who join us and those who are on or who get this on demand, just what it takes and what it is to be in this role, what it's like, how did you get there, all those things. And so I think it's valuable. I don't know. I hope you think it's valuable. I hope everyone who thinks this.
Oh, definitely. And I appreciate the awesome guests that you bring. Hi, guests.
Nice to meet you virtually.
Likewise, you too.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything yet, but I'm sure I will. So if y'all give me just a little time.
No worries. You know how it is. You know how it. You know the fire drill.
Oh yeah. Look, Dave, I want to make sure you don't call me out.
No doubt. I already said, we already promised that's not going to happen. We already promised that. She actually emailed me and said, Dave, I'll come to your sessions if you don't call me out.
Which means obviously he's going to call you out, right?
Yeah.
Oh, darn. And I thought I was getting the pass.
No, you know, I depend on the stalwart listeners, the folks who show real courage and show real interest. And in this industry, you're going to get called out. You're going to get called out. People are going to step up to you and ask you questions. You know, the leaders of these economic developers, like the one that Darrell represents, they're going to step up and ask a question about where you are in that whole process that helps them make money, right? The business. They're going to ask you about the business, but you're prepared. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
I'm prepared. I'm getting prepared. I'm staying prepared. I'm prepared.
There you go. There you go. Hey, Darrell, where are you now? You back in Connecticut, or are you down in still down in the
Connecticut, watching the snow come down, wishing I was down in Florida watching the sand.
Oh, wow.
Well, I don't envy you. That's why I left New York. That's why I left New York and ran down to Florida, ran down to Texas. But yeah, I don't envy that, man. So here.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
we got 3
cloudy in
minutes.
Georgia.
Georgia? Yeah. But it's warm there, isn't it? You got a little bit
It
of warm
is.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is warm.
Yeah.
So in Connecticut, you're not, is there like a lot of ice? Do you all have like ice storms up in Connecticut? Because I know in Georgia, what we do, we get ice. We don't really get snow, we get ice.
Yeah, usually if we do get ice, it's early in the season or late in the season. The rest of it is usually snow. So like we probably in the last maybe less than an hour, so we probably got about a half an inch of snow that just fell. So we call that postcard dusting.
I love it.
Not much at all. Yeah, I get it. Not much at all. Yeah, yeah. Right there. Let me get this up.
So we're in Georgia.
Atlanta.
And yeah, my granddaughters are in Atlanta, in that area. Right. So
Cool.
oh God, who is that guy?
Ah.
He doesn't look as good as the guy that's on screen, the live guy on screen. Yeah.
I try to shave my mustache and bring it close to the picture. So
That's right, because for a while, Darrell, you had what was a no shave November and no
yeah,
shave December, was it?
yeah, no shave November. Yeah, had the full beard, and
Yeah,
outside of the fact that, as you know, I used to have really long hair.
that's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Oh.
Hey, David and Darrell, is it okay if I don't know, I guess I do want to at least share that I am part of the Cyversity mentorship program, which I'm really glad to be a part of. It is right now very beneficial to me as I explore this area of cybersecurity. I've been in IT 20 years, but mostly on the desktop service desk side. So I'm trying to reskill or upskill into that cyber arena. I guess I'm torn because I started off technical, but now I find myself going more towards engaging with people, engaging with my customers. And I guess I'm trying to find that balance. It seems like as I mature in wisdom and age, I'm starting to be more sensitive to the needs of the user, more like on the social engineering side, maybe a security awareness side. But I still like the technical aspect, but I guess I'm just trying to find out where I can fit in. I don't know if I really want to do anything just straight security awareness, but I don't want to be a threat hunter. I don't really want to be a security analyst. But I want that balance. Do you all have any suggestions, Darrell? You got any suggestions what I should be considering or thinking about or exploring?
security awareness is not bad. I don't know, specifically, you talked about desktop support and help desk and engineering. I started out there. I started way back in my career doing help desk. So we've all been there. Where security awareness is big these days, especially when it comes to teaching non-technical folks the importance of cyber. Things like, not clicking on links, having good, maintenance, good hygiene when it comes to your passwords, and
Yes.
not sharing, and, not oversharing information on social media. Right. So those are the things that we teach employees as part of security awareness, because they may not all already know that, that's not necessarily a good thing. I mean, most people, when you go to sign up for credit cards and that sort of stuff, what are the few things they ask you? Things like, what's your mother's maiden name? What's your favorite car? What's your pet's name? Blah, blah, blah. What's your grandmother's birthday? And people give that information away freely on things like Facebook and Twitter. Hey, grandma's celebrating her 28th birthday today, right? You know, it's really easy to get most of that information off of social media. So teaching social security awareness programs in corporate environments, not just corporate, but even in your personal life, help teach people, the value of not doing those sort of things.
Thank you. But also I was thinking, I mean, does a person in that profession, because I mean, I do want to get paid, I do want to have a very nice, decent salary, and it seems like individuals that focus on customers, it seems like that they don't get as much in salary as those that are straight technical.
I don't know about that. Ask
Yeah, I don't know if
Mr.
that's
Elcock, because he's a customer advocate for his company. Right? That's all he does is focus on customers, right? So
what's the interest in focusing on the end user and the customer? I mean, you've been technical. You understand, you have a good understanding of the technology or the technologies that you use, and now you seem to be pivoting, if you will, to what's to be more customer focused, or to be end user facilitation focused. What's the interest there?
I guess my interest is that over the many years of, exploring technology and working with my customer base and listening to their needs, and kind of really not seeing some of their needs being fulfilled technology wise, or, things that they're needing not really being satisfied, because, some of IT like, well, we know what you need. This is what we're going to give you, and we're expecting you to use it, but it doesn't work for the customer. So I guess being able to help them to get something that they're going to use, something that they're going to be able to, just be able to use, to help them to get adjusted to technology. I feel like this is an interview question. I'm sorry. I know what I want to say, but I really don't know how to really articulate it. I hope it's clear where I'm going.
Yeah.
I just want to help the customer to get what they need so they can get the job done.
There's a couple statements in the chat. Janice. Hey, Janice, how are you?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I can't come off camera, but so my question was, have you considered an IT or a cybersecurity project manager role? Or they have roles that are called customer success managers?
Actually, I have.
Okay, because just listening to the conversation, those were the roles that popped in my mind. Having very limited experience in cybersecurity, I do work in the field though, and I've worked closely with those roles, and they seem like they might be of interest to you, or something just to pursue or entertain in your research.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Janice. Thank you. Hey, listen, I know people are going to straggle in here over the next hour or 30, 45 minutes, or however long we go. But I definitely wanted to get started. Excuse me, I've got not a frog, but a lump in my throat. So,
and Dave, I know people are just joining, but really quickly.
Yeah, but I want to get started, Darrell, because for the folks that usually come and the folks that usually catch us on demand, we usually get a healthy amount either way. But listen, I got a couple housekeeping rules that I want to take care of, so I'm going to go through that, and while people just sort of straggle in. But you guys are listening, and you've joined Cyversity's Impact Interview Series. Every month, on the fourth Saturday of every month, we interview someone who is holding a pivotal role for an economic developer, in the security industry, and we bring them to the table, or we bring them to this conversation so they can talk to all of our members and all of the individuals in the community that are trying to find a specific channel or way or path or process to be in the secure or take a role in the cybersecurity industry or the security industry. And Cyversity as an organization has been around for about 7 years, and they focus on achieving representation of women and minorities in cybersecurity. And they do it through the programs that are fostered or designed or curated to help you through that process. Those programs are designed to create recruitment, inclusion, retention, equity, longevity in the career. So that's what Cyversity has been about for the past 7 years, and we're glad that you folks are joining us through that process. All of our membership benefits are focused around helping you explore your career, like Bev was asking about exploring a new direction, a new career, and so or a new direction in the same career. But you know, we were just having that conversation, and there's a couple of ways that can happen. Also, we're looking to help folks access skills, competencies, KSAs, as it were. And for me, those KSAs always end up around business, communication, and technology skills. And then, of course, we help our members develop their skills throughout with scholarships and training and mentorship programs. And of course, we always have our networking events, whether they're virtual like this or they're local in the communities where you guys are individually, and then also our summits and our annual conference as well. If you're not a member of Cyversity, it's a good opportunity to scan the link that's on the screen now, so that you can you know, go to our get to our webpage and see all of the see the website and see all of the benefits that are there that may interest you and it may attract you to becoming a member with Cyversity. Most of the folks that are members, almost all of them have a, you know, we have a paid membership program where professionals invest about $100 a year in their to be involved and engaged and provide support and services and receive services from Cyversity. And students also do the same at a $20 level. So it's a great asset. It's a great opportunity for you to explore your next iteration of life, if you will. A lot of the topic areas that we cover are career development, career spotlighting, transitioning, leadership training, technical talks, and also a lot of mentorship. So the mentorship is a very heavy aspect here, and we've got a really robust mentorship program led by one of our board members. So should take advantage of those things if you haven't or have not already. Every month, well, just about every month, as you can see, we've got a couple of months listed here. We highlight a specific event that's going on. This month, of course, is Black History Month. We know it's never enough, right? It's never enough. We should probably take more time to discuss Black history and Black issues as well, minority issues. But you know, these are the things that we have focused on throughout the year. March is Women's History Month. May is Asian American, Pacific Islanders, and Senior Citizens Month. June is LGBTQ and Pride Month. September is Latino Heritage Month, and so forth. October, November, December, you could see them listed here as well. Our ground rules are simple. If you're on, please mute your mic to avoid any background noise. It's going to be about a 60-minute conversation, focusing on some of the things that we've discussed already. It's going to be a question and answer period, but I don't hinder folks from popping up and asking a question or raising a hand, so like you can ask a question mid-conversation. Something may come up at that moment that you want to speak about and ask about and talk about. I don't hinder people from doing that, so just come on off mute, raise your hand, and let's ask the question of our guest today, so that you can get an opportunity to speak to him directly about some things you're concerned about in your career, your progression. Session is being recorded, but you already know that because you're accepted and you're here. I'm going to place this link. This is a survey link that comes up at the end of our conversations, and typically you will even get an email from Cyversity's operations group asking you to comment on whether the conversation was supportive, performative, whether it helped, or it was just a waste of your time. I don't think that's the case, of course, but happy to hear hear your suggestions and your feedback, and I'll put that link in the conversation. To the guy that to the executive that we're talking to today, this is Darrell Hawkins. He's a longtime friend and a longtime colleague in this industry. Darrell has what just like Julian, our chairman from Cyversity last year, Darrell has a really incredible and interesting story, and how he's come to be where he's at, working at OTIS Elevator, which, gosh, man, they operate in more than 200 companies as a manufacturer. So that is, a challenge in and of itself for a guy to have to create and design the security architecture for people everywhere in 200 countries. So Darrell is our host today, is our guest speaker today. I'm going to stop sharing so that we can get back to where we are. Darrell, Darrell, welcome. Good, my man, and welcome, and thank you for joining us today and speaking with folks that are here live and folks that are, excuse me, on demand as well.
Thank you for the invite. I appreciate being here.
Great. Is your volume? You turn your volume up a little bit there?
Yeah, you want?
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
Move myself a little close to the mic.
It's that booming executive voice that we're always so used to. When we were talking about this, we were reminiscing the fact that we both grew up in Brooklyn, right? We both grew up in the rough and tumble section of Brooklyn. I never hesitate to tell people what it was like growing up in Brownsville, and what it took to, I don't know if the word is escape, because I'm still a Brownsville boy, right? So to navigate out of Brownsville, to come to the point where we are not living in the hood anymore, but now living in Austin, Texas, which is a far sort of distance or difference from Brooklyn. I know what it was like for me. So tell me, I always ask folks just to give us some background, but tell us, at least from the origins of Brooklyn, just give us a little bit about what you experienced living in Brooklyn. And then, of course, I want to build on that question as you go through.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about us, having, we didn't know each other growing up, but we definitely crossed the same streets back in Brooklyn. Me growing up in Crown Heights, single mom, 3 kids, 4-story walk up down in Crown Heights. And we talked about, our days in the summer in Betsy Hay Pool over there in Brownsville, right? Where we would go and swim. And the funny thing is, me growing up in Brooklyn, most people like, well, how did you learn how to swim in Brooklyn? And you got to explain to people, Brooklyn is kind of on an island, right? The islands of Coney and Long, yeah, but it's still an island, and we are on the Atlantic Ocean. And to think that I would ever have the opportunity to move out of, what I grew up in Brooklyn to, living in Connecticut and snowbirding to Florida for half the year, right? And owning a house in both Connecticut and Florida, it's a big change over, growing up in the streets in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's one of those funny things, right? That we shared, David, that, one of my role models growing up, outside of, my mom and my family, was my track coach, right? Because I was a swimming team, track team, in my younger days. And my track coach, I remember, he was, back in the day, it was boys' high school. It wasn't boys and girls high school. And that's where I was zoned to go. I didn't end up going there, but my coach was from there. And he used to always say, don't be one of those kids standing on the corner saying, I never had a chance. Nobody ever helped me out. Go ahead and be the master of your own destiny.
Right. And, back in Brooklyn, there were always 1 or 2 folks in the community who we called the community lions that always took, I don't know if it was control, but it was definitely made an influence and an impact on those of us that lived in that rough and tumble community. And, you know, there's a lot of folks like you and I that I've spoken to and interviewed that come from our community, either Brooklyn or the Bronx, or you know, or Staten Island, or any of those rough neighborhoods, or those economically challenged neighborhoods. I'll say that, economically challenged neighborhoods that definitely had to spend their time getting through that. You know, it's just been an interesting interesting journey, if I'll say so. So look, you're the CTO, you're the cyber CTO now for OTIS. Walk us through the journey from, you know, from Brooklyn to Long Island to Connecticut. Walk us through that, and you know, your progression of your career, the jobs that you have had that you've taken, how you've gone through that whole process to develop yourself to where you are today. Just walk us through Darrell.
It was definitely the long route. It wasn't a short road. You know, my first job out of college, I worked for a Wall Street bank, but I worked out of their office on Long Island. And you know, I started out at the bottom. I was the guy putting checks in envelopes, you know, literally taking the checks that came in from customers, stuffing them in envelopes, and then mailing them out at the end of the day. Right. So, you know, it's when you look back at it as a, you know, it's kind of a, you know, a humbling experience, but it also motivated me to move forward. Right. I moved from there to, you know, I posted for a job on a midnight shift in the bank. And I moved from putting checks in envelopes to running high-speed check sorters in the bank. So that was in the computer room. So I was happy then. I'm moving along, I'm running check sorters, and hey, now I got a real computer job, right? From there, report printing, and then finally computer operations. And like I was saying earlier before folks joined, I actually did work on the help desk. I did the long road. I did help desk, desktop support, working in the computer room. And back then it was punching cards and loading tapes. Right? So the old days, we didn't have personal computers on the desktop. Everything was you know, pretty manual. Right.
Right. Interesting approach. Look, it looks like you've really sort of navigated your career. You've had a couple of positions until you've gotten to here to OTIS. I know that you were at Synchrony. I know that you were at one of my customers, MTA. You know, tell us about your time there and what you did and what you had to do to move to the next level. I think that's some of the conversation that we're talking about with some of these folks that have joined us, as to what are those. There's no magic bullet to succeed. There's no magic bullet to a trajectory. You just have to go through the process and endure a couple of things. But let's hear about what you did at each one of those steps, if you will.
Yeah. So when, you know, way back early in the career, when I did those circuits at you know, I worked at Barclays Bank, and I did, you know, just about everything that you could do, starting from the check filing all the way through to help desk, right? And that's where I learned the core. And I remember one of the guys that was he was the lead programmer. He came to me and he said, "Hey, you know, why don't you go to programming school and learn how to code?" So I learned how to code in 370 assembler and JCL and RPG and Pascal and C, all of the old languages. And that was a 52-week course, 4 nights a week. I would leave my job at 75 Wall Street, get the Long Island Railroad out to Queens, then drive way out on Long Island and be in class until 10 o'clock at night. And I did that for 52 weeks for 4 nights a week to learn how to code. I didn't end up taking a programming job. I ended up moving into desktop support at a major New York City hospital. As you know, side note is I've been lucky enough to work in healthcare, transportation, manufacturing, and financial services, and even worked for a liquor distributor at one point. So nice exposure to different industries. And when I moved into desktop support, I started, you know, it was one of those things where, you know, I picked up a book, started reading about networking, did my, back then it was my Novell's CNE, right? Did all 6 exams, studied at night after working all day. And I was able to get the certification. And I used to be around in my living room with routers and switches and wires and computers all networked together, studying and learning how to do what I needed to do to get my certification. So again, the hard work, you put the work in, you know, it's a journey, but you put the hard work in and eventually it pays off for you.
But you do got to do the hard work and you do got to put the time in. I mean, looks like you've really curated that career path. And you're one of those executives that has, as a minority or a Black executive, you've had to go through, I don't know if I call it challenges, but definitely there's some differences between what you've experienced and what our counterparts have experienced. And in going through that, what lessons have you learned, and what have those lessons taught you about how to navigate the corporate structure?
Yeah, and I know you talked about, you know, we talked about this, you know, people are looking for that magic bullet, right? You know, what is that key, that magic bullet to get on the train, and you go, oh, wow, there really isn't no magic bullet, but there is. And this is one of them. You know, the thing that I learned early is building your brand and networking, right? And it's things that we learn, you know, things that we learn through our engagement in Cyversity is, you know, how do you build your brand and understanding who you are? And when I worked, you know, I did a long career, and you know, I did a long career in one of the big conglomerates with the big names and 2 letters, right? And one of the management things they taught us is understanding what they call the book on you. You know, no one's heard of what that is. The book on you is what other managers and executives say about you when you're not in the room, right? When they go and they do their planning and promotional sessions and they talk about you, and we do that, you know, I do that with my staff, and you know, you sit in a room and, you know, they used to call it the rack and stack, when you put everybody's name on the board and you understand, all right, so what do people think about you when you're not in the room? And that really is, you know, that's the lesson, that's the magic bullet, understanding and building your personal and professional brand, understanding, you know, who your champions are and, you know, how they got to where they are, finding that mentor. You know, I had fortunate enough to have a person that actually took me under his wing at several companies. And I've learned a lot from that person as a mentor. And I'm looking on the call and I see a couple of people that have worked with me at other companies, and understanding who those key people are in your network. Right? And your network, it's funny, I did this, McKinsey and Company has this, I did the first cohort of the Black Executive Leadership Program that McKinsey sponsored. And they talk about your champions and who your champions are. And your champions could either be someone you work with, someone you work for, or someone in your professional or personal life that you can speak to either candidly or look for advice and say, all right, you know, how do I get there? And I think that's the importance of a group like Cyversity, is we teach, you know, and help people understand how to move your brand along and build that branding so that you can get to that next level. And it was all about the McKinsey program was all about, you know, how to get to that seat in the boardroom, or, you know, not being in the room where the decisions are made, but being at the table in the room where the decisions are made, because that's the key distinguishing fact, right?
Are you advocating that your network, or are you suggesting that your network is the thing that helped sort of powered you through or helped you progress in your career? Speak to us about how your network has been part of the anchor, if you will, or the foundation of how you sort of matriculated and navigated your career.
Absolutely, it's your network, right? They always say, people always have that cliche. It's not, what you know, it's who you know. It's a combination, right? But it's a lot about once you get to a certain level, it becomes who you know. When you get those offers to come interview for those executive level jobs, it's all about your network. You don't go looking for those jobs come looking for you, right? And it's based on your brand, and I've done more as I, move toward that, that tail end of the career. I've done more about, and more with doing public speaking events. Last year I did 5 or 6 conferences, big conferences and shows, and I've done kickoff meetings with global sales executive to show them from a voice of the customer how I see them being able to help us as their customer. So you're building your brand, networking, all of that comes together in advancing your career.
Right. One of the things that one of our past guests, he's a CISO for Hearst, Michael Palmer, he offered a suggestion, a book, right? He offered a book that's called Never Eat Alone. The book helps you understand the importance of having great relationships with the folks that you work with, the folks that you are engaged with, because as to your point, Darrell, when they have those conversations about who to move, when and where, if you're not in the room, somebody needs to speak up for you. And to that extent, having a great network gives you that opportunity. So, executives, like yourself, they have this trigger, right? They have this moment of why that helps them sort of progress from where they, I remember one of our conversations, you said, hey, I was in the mail room, I was stuffing envelopes for checks to go out, the genesis of my career, but something triggered me to say, let's move to the next level. It could be, I got to feed the family better, or I've got to look at a different trajectory in my own life. What was your trigger, Darrell? What moved you?
Yeah, so it's funny, an asterisk to that story is, so I recently saw one of these, motivational speeches by a guy named Brian Shaw, and I don't know if you're familiar with him or not.
Mm-hmm.
And what the person he is, and Brian Shaw was a retired U.S. Air Force. He flew and I want to make sure I don't do him any disservice. He flew 212 combat missions, and on one of his last combat missions, he actually got shot down during the Vietnam era, and he talks about his journey. He was shot down. He had to get rescued by special forces, and he had severe burns and injuries all over. And he talks about laying in the hospital room, and as a pilot, as a top pilot, thinking, oh man, my career's over. Not only that, but people said he would never make it. He was going to die, right? And he came out of that in his journey. Not only did he recover from those injuries, but he went on to teach at the Top Gun pilot training school, and he's one of 93 pilots to fly the SR-71 Blackbird, the stealth reconnaissance plane. And he said what motivated him is that as he was laying there, going forward, he thought of himself in context of a 12-year-old. Anytime somebody said, you can't do this, he said, why not, right? So, and that's how I look at things. I'm like, when people told me, well, when I was in high school, they took my advisor said, yeah, well, based on your SAT scores and, all of the tests that you take, you probably are better off doing something like being a bus driver or a train engineer, right? I'm glad I listened to him because I went on to work in IT in New York City Transit, right? No. But when they were telling me, well, you can't do this because your scores are not high enough, or because your grades are not high enough. Why not, right? Why can't I do that, right? How do you deal with adversity? You ask yourself, why not? And me, dude, one of my favorite sayings is, if the answer is no, you've asked the wrong question, right? So if somebody tells you no, take a step back and redo that strategy and ask the question a different way. If they say, no, you can't do this, why not? Then rephrase and change your strategy and go back to it to achieve the ultimate goal, which is, for most of us, whether it's getting into cybersecurity or getting to executive level, moving forward that way. And two people that I'm on that are really close to. One is one of them is my sister, who's, thank you for joining, and the other one is a really good friend of mine, Gracie Pereira, and she was one of the first Cisco CCIEs in the country, right? And she worked for me when I was back at one of my old companies, and she's now a managing director at one of the big four, right, in the cyber practice. And they live by the why not, and there's others on that. I didn't forget about you. I see you on there, but they live by that why not, and I watch them, and I get motivation from seeing folks like that achieve things that people always say that you can't do.
Interesting. So it sounds as if when you're faced with I guess I'll use the word detractor, and you've asked a question and they've given you a not so positive response, you have to sort of pivot. Is this a sort of a strategic approach, or is this a mental approach, an emotional approach that you're taking to pivoting and sort of readjusting or realigning your request or your requirement? How are you making that sort of pivot, if you will?
I remember somebody said to me once, because I was in a heated discussion about something, and they said, after the meeting, they said, listen, which would you rather do? Would you rather win, or would you rather do both? I mean, would you rather win, or would you rather be right? And I was like, I'd rather do both, right? I want to be right and I want to win, right? So changing that strategy, having a goal, setting your targets. In the new business world, we talk about OKRs, which is your objectives and key results, and cutting off, biting off little pieces of the elephant at a time. So you do have a final end game. If you talk about the old project management, where they used to do waterfall, and you have toll gates, and you have a big project, and then you never get to the end because it keeps changing. And then you go to agile project management, and you talk about making adjustments and doing little sprints. And then you talk about OKRs, which are key deliverables over short periods of time to get to your ultimate strategy and your ultimate goal. You know what I always say to you, David, it's a game of chess, right? We're not playing checkers here. You have to have a plan, and you have to understand the strategy, but you may not get your complete strategy done right away. You'll have to take the wins where you can get them and then move on from there.
I'm glad you transitioned, Darrell, our conversation to the business. Good Lord, it's the business. And I've listened to some of your conversations and or speeches, and I've also spoken with you about the importance of the economic developer of the business and your emphasis on supporting the business. I mean, we all know that. So what's your deepest sort of satisfaction that you get from supporting the business, from either a return on investment perspective or from just a performative perspective, from doing the damn job right?
Yeah, I think that, especially earlier on in our career, what a lot of people do, especially technical people, is they make the mistake of saying, well, of just putting themselves in a box and not understanding, why they're there. And when you talk about the business, well, you mentioned that, I work for, a consumer credit card company, and the business was technology. Our edge was technology. And if you talk about technology as being a, you can't look at technology, and especially cyber, you can't look at us as being just a cost center. We have to be, an enabler and contribute directly to the bottom line. So when I pitch my strategy going forward, and I go to ask for budget, the first thing I do is I say, well, how can I solve the problem? You use the term for the business. Like, what is it that we do, and how is what I do contributing to the bottom line and making us profitable? Well, in the cyber world, you could talk about business email compromise, and a perfect example is if somebody in your financial part of your company gets compromised by phishing email, as we call it, where they get targeted and they click on a link and they transfer funds, and those funds are, millions of dollars because they did the wrong thing. Well, it's your job as a practitioner to prevent that from happening, and it's your job and your strategy to show the direct correlation between what you do and the return on investment. By preventing that business email compromise, I saved the company $1.3 million as a random number, right? So equating what you do to a direct bottom line number in your company is important. And that's how you become successful as a leader in your company, not by the amount of toys you can bring in. In cyber, we were always the scary people, because I did, I ran, as red teams. I did penetration testing. I used to do have my own consulting company where I did forensics for a private investigator that did divorce cases. So I'd sneak in and grab somebody's hard drive, pull all of their data on whoever the offending spouse was, put together a report that would then go to court, right? But it's all about how you contribute, how your skill set contributes to the end result that makes it profitable for somebody to want you to do. The so what, right?
Right.
Yeah, I know you're a cyber guy. So what? What do you do? Right.
Yeah, I'm in cyber, but what do you do? And you obviously you just need to be able to explain how your role specifically relates to revenue generation. Like you said, you just have to be able to explain how you help. How do you select people for your team? I mean, people aren't just falling off the tree. We know that there's a quote unquote a huge vacancy out there. I don't know if you yourself feel that's a real number, or if that's because the conversation goes back and forth. But if you had to start selecting people and building a team like you build the Knicks, the Knicks, not the Lakers. You have to build the Knicks. How do you start determining who is and should be on your team? What are you looking for?
Yeah, well, the Nets. You meant to say the Brooklyn Nets, right?
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm kidding. No, well, it's funny because I tell people are amazed, and I say this all the time. When I interview people, I make a decision whether I'm going to hire you or not in the first 7 minutes of my conversation with you. Right? The first 7 minutes, I know that whether I'm going to hire you or not. And that's because if I brought you in for an interview, that means I've already pre-qualified you for the job and the role. So you're already pre-qualified. And if you come in and you cannot talk about the things on your resume, and I'll pick certain key phrases and I say, well, you say you did XYZ, tell me about that. And if you can't tell me about the things on your resume, then the rest of it is just us having a conversation, because I've already decided that you're not part of my team. And as you know, David, my last few roles, I've been lucky enough to build teams as part of divestitures, mergers and acquisitions, and just being part of new startups. Being part of companies, and in most cases, like my current company, over 100 years old, but we spun off from our parent company. And I had the opportunity to build out the program that we have today and pick the team. Most successful executives travel in packs, right? Everybody said they travel in packs. They bring key people along with them. And that goes back to knowing your brand and your networking, right? You have key people that you trust, that you bring along with you, and then you plug in the other pieces around it. And I always say, if I'm the smartest person in the room, number one, I'm in the wrong room. And number two, I've got the wrong team, right? So put people around you that are smart and that help you grow as a leader, not someone that thinks like you and talks like you.
Right. Are these skills that you're looking for from your team, are they technical skills solely, or are they other skills that are that are ancillary, that are supportive or accessory to technical skill? Obviously, you got to have some technology skills, but what else what else makes a difference for you?
All of the above, right? We talk about different tracks, right? Some people want to be technical, and I've had people that work for me that they just, they were really good. For instance, you talk about pen testers, that they're really good at sitting in a closet, digging into the details and finding the things that that hackers would find, but they do not want to have anything to do with speaking to other people or doing things in the public. And you have to understand your team and your team skill sets. And I have other people that I can put in a room, I can drop them in a room anywhere. And I know that, they'll survive. They won't embarrass me. They won't embarrass themselves. They'll be able to talk. You can put them up on a stage, or you can put them in a bar and they'll come out equally unscathed, right? So understanding those skill sets, when you build a team, that they're not always going to be, especially in cyber, not everybody's going to be a technician. You talk about the pillars of cyber, obviously I've gone through, I did my CISSP, my security training, and you talk about the pillars of cyber, dealing with auditors. 2 weeks ago, I had to present to the cyber steering committee and the CEO and all of the CIOs globally on what we are doing in terms of our looking at critical applications in the environment. Now, the groundwork to that is you get your super techie people to do it. The front end of that is somebody's got to be able to do that translation between that tech and the senior executives and the board of directors and the CEO, right? And the business people. Person is out worrying about how many elevators we're going to ship this year and making sure we have inventory. They don't care about the what goes into the soup to doing passwordless authentication. They just care about the friction that's caused by a field service mechanic having to sit there and call the help desk to reset a password, right? So that's my business case. Enhance productivity, reduce friction, return on investment, increase in our profits, because the less time they spend resetting password, the more profitable they become as a mechanic or a field service person.
As part of our cyber, first of all, that's a great response, Darrell. That really covers a host of sort of how-tos, if you will, how-tos and what-tos, for being, for answering the bell when you're dealing with being a great interpreter to the corporate executives who do or don't. Some do understand what you're doing, some just don't, because they're focused on the business itself and how it relates to the general public. I wanted to ask you, in your role in Cyversity, because I've heard you talk about this, that you make some pretty significant decisions that focus on helping the organizations that you work for grow. You make those decisions, and when you're talking about to folks in Cyversity or to mentees or what have you, or any of the other folks that you're dealing with specifically in Cyversity, how do you relate what you've done to a mentee or a person that hasn't been in this industry as long as you have, and how do you help bring that stark reality to them? How do you help convey that real message to them about what it means and what it needs to mean to be part of a production team? How do you bring that message home?
As they say, teamwork makes the dream work, right? You when you're in a company like the company I'm in, it starts from the top, right? You know, people, you know, they always say, you know, we eat our own dog food. I prefer to say we drink our own champagne.
Yes, sir.
Right? You know, it starts with the principles. Our CEO has guiding principles for the company at the top that we live by. And that goes throughout the company. And as a leader, you share those principles. You lead by example. You make sure that you understand what diversity means and inclusiveness. Make sure that you understand how to collaborate. I mean, we've got, you know, in our line of work, David, especially in cyber or even in IT, right? There is, you know, there's always the tax, right? You know, there's that, you know, we call it a black tax, right? But it doesn't, you know, it's not necessarily always black. It can be a black tax, woman tax, minority tax, you name it. But there's always that way of looking at people differently than you might at some others. So, you know, when you talk about being diverse, right, and you talk about companies, and you see it, it's all over the news now, and it's all over LinkedIn and everywhere, and you talk about, hey, diversity and inclusion. We want to be diverse and we want to be inclusive, but you have to look at those things in context to what it really means, right? If, for instance, you have a company that's a global company and a good percentage of your employees and associates are in, you know, a region that's made up of a specific demographic, is that diverse to the folks that are in the US? You know, if 100% of my, you know, if 80% of my company was in a country that was Black, right? Am I being diverse by saying I hire Black people, right? As an example. And what a lot of companies, especially US companies and global companies do, that when they count their diversity numbers, they don't look at the demographic makeup of their entire population. If 50% of your employees are in Asia, are you diverse hiring Asians, right? Same scenario as being in a Black country or being in the US. Can you count being diverse in the US if your population is exclusive of Blacks? So you have to look at the context of what those numbers are. I work for a big corporation, and in my division, they always talked about the diversity and inclusiveness, but while I was at that company from the mid-90s to, you know, for approximately 25, almost 30 years in IT, in that division, they had not hired or promoted one Black person into an executive role in almost 30 years. But if you look at the numbers, they were diverse and inclusive, right? So you have to look at the context.
Wow. So that bears this next question about actual diversity and what does that actually mean? Is it like a passing generational word, like quotas and affirmative action and all those things? Is it a term that comes and has some validity to it, or is it just another passing trope, if you will, that, you know, hey, we want to be diverse, or we're going to shoot for diversity? In America, you know, in America, we've got an incredible amount of talent in underserved communities that we could train to be part of the economic structure, but because we haven't trained them to be part of that whole economic structure, this country loses an enormous amount of revenue. But what does that term diversity actually mean to you? Is it a good stick word, or is it just a throw out there word?
It's again, you have to look at it in context of, you know, what the company does, right? You know, there's a big push, for instance, for women in technology, right? And it's, it's there for a reason, because traditionally, you didn't see a lot of women in technology careers. It just didn't happen. Most of the guys, you know the old stereotype from the 70s, glasses, pocket protectors, and pencils, right?
Mhm.
Males that look a certain way. So there is opportunity, and a lot of companies, especially major firms, are embracing the opportunity to improve, especially when it comes to women and Blacks in America, to give them that exposure to get into technology careers, and especially cyber. Cyber is in a whole different, cyber as part of technology.
Right.
It's a whole different ballgame, right? Because you can look at the Googles and the Microsofts laying people off, but then when you talk about cyber, we've got a negative unemployment rate. We can't find people.
Can't find enough people, yeah. Yeah, so when it comes to making huge decisions or big decisions about team development, and you're looking at, in some sense, hey, look, I want to increase the diversity of my team, specific to your own demographic, if you will. How do you make that decision? Are you at all saying, I want to increase the amount of people of color and women and people of color? Or are you just going strictly, hey, look, this is the skill that I need. If you fall in that skill set, if you fall into that skill arena, I'm going to select you? Or how are you making those decisions about building your team? I think that's where I'm going.
You look for the best qualified people, but that doesn't mean you only look at the Harvards and the Yales of the world, right? You look at, currently I'm mentoring a young man. He graduated from Howard last year, and he's in our digital technology leadership program. And we do recruit directly from schools like Howard. We do look at HBCUs to see, because there is a pipeline of talent, really good talent coming out of those schools. That doesn't mean we're exclusive of other minority groups, right? Because you can't do that, right? You look for the best qualified, but you also open up the opportunity for schools that may not be exposed to the pipelines that some of those other schools are exposed to.
Right. Your role in Cyversity is to help advance women and minorities in cybersecurity. I mean, and you take that role very seriously, Darrell. I mean, it's been really interesting to watch when you come in and what you're interested in focusing on and bringing to the table. I mean, what do you consider to be your strong points and your role in helping women and minorities and underserved folks get into and through this whole navigational process to get into some aspect of security and or IT and or security? What is your role there? What do you see as your strong points or your elements of focus?
It's funny because I'd be remiss if I didn't give a plug out to my fellow Alpha fraternity brothers, right? But one of our guiding principles is each one teach one, right? And that stems from the slavery days of bringing literacy to ex-slaves, right? Teaching them how to read and write. So apply that context to teaching people, how do you get into cyber careers, right? How do you teach people to get in there? How do you tell them where to start? What kind of certifications do they need to do? What kind of background and foundations do they need? If it were easy, there wouldn't be such a demand for it, right? And nowadays, with all of the new privacy regulations, and again, we talk about the technical side versus the non-technical side. Specifically in cyber, there are things like we talked earlier about cyber awareness, cyber education. You talk about regulatory and compliance, dealing with lawyers and auditors and board members, having people understand there is a path both ways. But if the really successful people can be successful if they understand that you don't do this. You don't do this alone. And once you get to the top, you bring people with you, right? You bring good people with you. You spread that wealth. You just don't walk and say, well, I had to pull myself up, therefore nobody else. You need to do it the hard way like I did. Now, the point is not to repeat history, help people get there, right? And not have to do it the hard way.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's so important to be able to turn around to turn around the folks that are finding their way through this process and say, hey, listen, we used to deal with everything with decks and fax machines, but now it's PC, so it's not as challenging as it used to be. Today it's a lot easier, and here's how I see that process being easier. I got one industry question, but I also want to look to everyone in the audience and say, if you have a question for your colleague and your friend, and or for Darrell, our host or our interviewer today, please come off mute or put your question in the chat box so that we can ask Darrell your question. Darrell, there's a question I wanted to ask you. I'm sorry.
I know there's a question in the chat from Janice Sanders, and she asked, how do I specifically add value, and what value do I add? Is around, I don't know, Janice, if you're still there. Oh yeah, there you are. So Janice, I don't know if you want to come off mute, and I'll address your specific question.
Hi, Darrell, thank you. Actually, I was kind of throwing that out there during the conversation when you were speaking about what we bring to the table. And so I threw it out there just as a question to ask ourselves. What value do I add when I'm going into those interviews? And like you said, they've already pre-qualified me to come to the table. Mm-hmm. So what value am I bringing? Am I able to speak to my resume, the things that are in my portfolio, and actually be able to add value to the company that I'm potentially hoping to come on board with? So.
Right. That's exactly right, Janice. And, it's funny because each role that I've been in, I've always made sure I've been part of mentorship programs and working with, interns and young folks. I can say young because I'm allowed to say that now, right, David? I can say that now, right? I can say young folks, right? And there was this young man that worked for me, and he did 2 internships at the companies that I was at, and 2 separate companies. And his first internship, very, very smart. He was an engineering student, and his first role had to do with coding and doing web development. And then at the next company he did the internship on, he came in and he got hired for the internship, and we didn't put him in coding. We put him as a program and project manager. And he came to me and he goes, why did you put me there? I'm a great coder. Why would you do that? And fast forward, he graduated top of class from the University of Connecticut. And before he even graduated school, he was hired by Google. And the reason why they picked him out of all of the other highly qualified technical graduates was because he had soft skills, right? So what did he bring to the table? Not just his technical skills, but his ability to lead and his soft skills and being able to talk to other folks and being able to say, the so what, as I said earlier, you're a technician, so what, right? What distinguishes you from anybody else? What can you do for the company? What do you bring to us that helps us grow as a firm?
Right. I don't know if that's a question from Alizia Wong for the career changer who are not students. Is there any apprenticeship or internships, for non-veterans? I would say absolutely yes, but Darrell, you first, and then I
was going to say she just put in a plug for Cyversity, right?
Absolutely,
because that's the goal.
Lisa, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Cyversity, but here at Cyversity, we strongly focus on those who are career changers, those who are and are not students, those who are and are not veterans. We're not focused on any one specific area, but those folks who have an interest in changing their career and maybe navigating over to some security, IT, or what have you. Cyversity is a good place to begin sort of your development. I mean, there's a couple of mentees that I have on the line now that have that are here that started in one place and ended up in someplace else, and are growing their career as they go through that. So yeah, I am a new member for 2 months. Well, welcome and thank you for joining. And if you have any additional questions, I don't know if you have a mentor, Lisa, and if you'd like to come off mute, please do so. But I don't know if you have any additional questions, but here's I'm going to put my email in the chat so that you can email me, and either I could direct you or help you find anything specifically that you're looking for. Manuel, looks like you've got a question. Do you want to come off chat or come on in visual and ask the question? How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for
Look at that
bringing
bright face. Look at that bright face, Darrell. That's great. That's awesome. Thank you for coming off, and thank you for asking your question.
Thank you so much. So my question goes to Darrell. I've spoken to hiring managers, and some of them will tell me, well, I don't really care about your soft skill. Just give me the technical skills. As long as I know you can get the job done, I'll bring you on board. Some cares about the soft skill. Like, hey, I can teach technical skills. I really want to know that you are a good team player, you have that soft skill, you can communicate well and do, work with the team and all that. So if you were to choose now, out of the soft skill and the technical skills, which of these two are you going to prioritize? And what will be your advice for someone like me trying to pivot into the cybersecurity space?
So, I mean, it's a great question, because we always talk about things in terms of the track you want to be in. So, I have cyber architects that report into me, and their role is design work, but part of being a solution architect within cyber architecture is being able to talk to people, look at requirements and what they're trying to do, and translating that into technical. And I think that's the part of the soft skills that you need. There are people that are really good coders, and all they want to do is sit behind a terminal and code all day. And like I said, I have people that are, they're, black hat, red team people that go out and they break into our apps internally to see where the weaknesses are so that we can strengthen our defenses. And they're really good at it. But at the end of the day, again, so what? What do you do with that data once you get it? I have to then take that report, present it out and say, this is why I do the things that I do, right? This is why I ask you for funding. This is my strategy for getting more resources, whether it be funding for your program or more technical resources within your staff. Understanding that so what and the value you bring, and you can't do that always sitting behind the keyboard. At some point, you got to step out into the room with other people and tell them why it is you do what you do. And that's when you look at successful leaders, that's where they usually end up having to, especially if you look at like startups, right? When you want to pitch your product to, you think about Shark Tank, right? You got to go and pitch your product to people that want to invest in you. That's soft skills. That's not just, hey, I made a better mousetrap. That's like, here's why my mousetrap is better. Does that make sense?
Sounds good, yeah. Thank you.
You know what I've also noticed, Emmanuel, is that when you're talking to a CISO, they typically want to know what you know. Do you know what you're doing? And if you're able to illustrate or demonstrate that you know what you're doing, then they want to know if you can communicate what you're doing and how your specific role fits into aligns with the business initiatives that they're involved in. So yes, the technology is critical and it always evolves, but being able to explain to the person that you report to, and if they put you in a position to explain to the folks above them exactly what your role and how your role benefits. It goes back to Janice's statement, this is the value that I bring to it. I know it, I know what I'm doing, and I know how to do it, and I can even explain it. And that's also goes back to that being able to interpret or translate what you do. That's what Darrell was talking about earlier, being a translator. And so, it's almost hand in hand that you have to select both of those as you go down that line, as you go down the road to being a proficient in a specific area. I know what I'm doing, but I also know how to communicate what I'm doing. So
thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I'm glad we can help. There's another question. Okay. See, I know I had your name right last time we talked, but I don't want to butcher it again, sir. So please come off mute and tell us your name again. And also, I'm going to get this right. I promise, because every time you come,
give it a try. Give it a try.
It's good to see you again, sir. It's really good to see you. How are you out? You're in Africa now, correct?
Yeah, Uganda.
So
yes.
Please ask your question.
I would first want to pronounce my name for you very clearly, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's Deogracious Okello.
Okay, I'm going to stick with Okello.
So first of all, I would like to thank Darrell for the communication. It has been very key. And I would go straight into the question, which is, I've been encountering a problem of I joined the mentorship, plus I'm being mentored right now by Dan Glass, which is going on well so far. I wanted to know certificates and SANS Institute. There are issues when it comes to me being from Uganda, and since SANS is in the US, I don't know if I'm able to get a scholarship from that.
Well, yeah, I can't tell you for certain based on schools, but the company that I work for, we're in, like David said earlier, we're in close to 200 countries, right? So it's not just that we're based out of the US, but we have associates in just about every country in the world, and they're open to any opportunities that the company offers globally, right? So it's not just, I'm not in the US. Does that mean I'm not available for it? No, absolutely not. Anything that's available to anyone in the US is available to anyone in any of the countries that we operate in. I mean, does that answer your question, or? Kind of?
I meant, yeah, kind of.
You meant what? Go ahead.
I meant the scholarships. For SANS Institute, I was trying to register for it, but it requires someone to be in the US for it, even if I'm a Cyversity member.
Yeah, well, SANS is a specific, they're a separate organization. I mean, they do great work, and we do, a lot of folks get their SANS certifications. We don't specifically offer a SANS scholarship, but SANS is an international, if you get a SANS certificate from any one of their programs, it's looked at, I look at that as one of the top certs when people apply for jobs, right? And it doesn't matter where you are when you apply for them. Right? The SANS program is pretty intense, and it's a good way to get into the industry.
Right. So from a scholarship point of view, have you looked at any of the scholarship programs that Cyversity is offering, like our SANS Diversity Academy, which is probably going to be launching soon, our Security Innovation Academy? We also have a program focused with I just saw it yesterday, Palo Alto. They have a scholarship program, and also ISC Squared. So there's several corporations, and also Intuit. There's a couple of organizations that have scholarship programs that you can take advantage of here at Cyversity. You have my email there. If you want to email me, I will happily pass you or forward you to the right person so you can ask those detailed questions and get those specific answers. Okie doke? Nod your head.
Well, yeah, even I think you just mentioned, and it's worth, I know you kind of went fast, but I know Cyversity was doing something in conjunction with scholarships being offered by ISC Squared, right? You mentioned that. I mean, ISC Squared is obviously a key certification, any of their certifications in terms of cyber, and it's specifically at the top of the food chain is the CISSP, right? So
Great. So it looks like Omar Barrero has a question. Omar, please come off mute and let us see you. How you doing, Omar? It's good to see you again.
I'm good, and you?
I can't complain, man. How's everybody? How's the family?
We're good.
Good,
Really
good.
cold here in Boston, but we're good.
I know that. I know where you are. I know exactly where you are. Good. Your question?
Yes, because this question is more related about experience as an entrepreneur. See, I've seen this a serial entrepreneur. He has been the CEO of several companies. Just wondering, from your perspective, what will be the best advice you can give to someone who's also basically trying to create a startup and starting being independent in the cybersecurity field? You can just give share some of your knowledge regarding that and best advice that you can give.
as an independent consultant, or so just
Correct. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
so just starting up your own cyber company, is that
Correct? Yes.
Yeah, so it goes back to back to the beginning, right? Building your network, because you get called in. You get called in based on, if somebody knows your brand and know that you do good work, then you'll get called to the table. I'm looking at the list of names, and see my good friend Margie on here, and she's one of those people that's an independent consultant that runs her own company and her own brand, and she gets called to the table a lot, and it's not always easy, right? But she keeps fighting a good fight and getting her name out there and going to conferences. Sometimes it means, being that person that's going to the cyber conference and hanging out in the lobby of the expo, just talking to people as they go by and meeting people, right? And then you build that book, that business book, and then people will start looking for you.
So I would also ask a question, Omar, since I know you reasonably well. What's the why behind starting your own? What's the purpose, the why, and the intricate details of, well, not even intricate, but just the why about starting. You're in a good position where you are. Why start this? Why?
I guess it's because see that because I can focus on something that I really am passionate and I can work. I can develop myself, and the limit that I put on myself is only me. Instead of just working in a company where there are some chances where you're going to hit a ceiling on your career progression. So I'm just trying to understand if I can leverage my knowledge, experience, and my network, so I can start something independent. So I again, not being dependent of a single company or someone else, just rely solely on my work and skill set. So I was just wondering that was the why of the question, to see what would be the best way to basically start that road.
Right.
Definitely build your book of business, market your brand, and once you get into, it's funny, it's how do I get it? How do I get in the door when I don't even know where the door is, right? Right. Yeah. But once you get in the door, then people come looking for you. They say, yeah, I know him. He's done work for me. And like a lot of work is done by referral. Like if somebody comes to me and say, hey, I'm looking for a company that's really good at red teaming, right? Then I'll go, well, yeah, actually, I do know somebody. And it's funny because, in the company, we do these, these employee awards, and that are not necessarily about, merit or performance, but, just employee, I call them feel good employee awards. And last quarter, I won the I know somebody award, because everybody says, well, if you need somebody that knows something about such and such, go talk to Darrell. And I was, yeah, I know a person, right? And that's how you get in the door. People go, yeah, are you looking for somebody really good at doing, governance work, or doing, regulatory work, or doing pen testing, or doing, so yeah, actually I do. I know somebody, and I'm going to call Omar and say, hey, Omar, I've got this company looking for this person to do this. Are you available? Right. So market your brand.
Got it. Thank you.
Omar, not Omar. Thanks, Omar, for asking the question as well. Darrell, we've got a couple of minutes left. I wanted to ask you a specific question about where are you going? What's your next leap or jump or iteration of development or achievement or accomplishment? What's next for Darrell?
Keep fighting the good fight, David. If I look at, my next step in my journey is to continue to do some of the things I'm doing now. Continue to speak at functions, be involved with organizations like Cyversity to keep mentoring, and then, to start seeking those seats on, it is those, the journey is you start out being on advisory boards, maybe customer advisory boards, then on non-paid board of directors, then ultimately you want to be on a paid board of director where companies are calling you in based on your history and your expertise, and then being on the, on the circuit, the conference circuit, where people are paying you for the things that are your passion, that you really enjoy doing anyway. I enjoy doing what I do. And if somebody wants to pay me to do that, then that's icing on the cake, right? Just follow your passion, and then, do what you enjoy doing. And that's where I'm going.
Agreed. If you had a parting question for the folks in the audience, I'm sort of calling him, trying to throw in a ringer there at the end of this conversation. But if you had a question or a parting comment for the folks in the audience, folks you know and folks that you don't know, what would be your parting statement or question to all of us?
She's gonna yell and hate me for it, but without saying the company that you work for, Gracie, as an executive, in your company, when you look for people at your company, right? What do you say to folks that want to change career? Because I know I've known you a long time, and I've watched your career grow, and you get to the executive level you're in. What's the advice you would give folks?
Yeah, so Darrell, and I heard every word that you said, and and to the folks that don't know me, I worked with Darrell, and I remember him talking to me on an elevator, and that was my 5-minute interview with him. And he was like, "Come join my team," and I was like, "Yes, I am, all in for it." But just going back to what Darrell just said, right? What do I look, right? Just it's important for us, all of us, to understand, yes, technical skills. And I've heard a couple of you say that soft skills are something that we cannot, teach. Technical, we can, but being sure that everything you write on your resume is accurate. It tells a lot about yourself. Just be honest of what can you do and how can you get to the next level. I think building your brand, networking, just like Darrell said, is key to success. The more the people you know, the more people you will show that what your brand is and what you can and cannot do. That is what is your next step to your successful career. I think that's really, really important.
And Gracie's absolutely right. She was, I was passing her in the hallway. She was on a consulting assignment at a company I worked for. And I was just, younger in my younger days, and I had long hair down to my waist. And I saw her in meetings. I'm like, you need to work for me. You need to come work on my team. And then, from there, she helped me in that role. She made me more successful in what I was doing. And, she's had quite a bit of success in her career now. So.
Right. Well, Darrell, we so appreciate the time that we've had with you today. I hope this was as enjoyable for you as it was for me. I really enjoyed it, and I hope I know your colleagues that are here. And look at that. Eliza says, Darrell, you're so very humble. And
Thank you.
it's a good place. Yeah, it's a good comment and a good it's a good comment and a good perspective for someone to have about you as a humble person who's navigated themselves to where they are in their career. It's a real good comment. Thank you, Eliza. But I'm really grateful for you having spent the time with us today. I know that we'll get more comments from other folks that are viewing on demand. And any parting comments for us today?
Yeah, like I said, do what you enjoy doing, be passionate about it, right? And, and when I talk to vendors, I always tell them, if you solve my business problem, the sale will come. Well, it's the same thing for your career. If you solve a problem that the company has, then you'll get the job, right? My last roles were in roles like no one ever heard of a cyber CTO before. Right? You ask people, it's either CISO or deputy CISO. No one ever heard of a cyber CTO. So that was a role, right? My last role, cyber audit and controls and internal audit for a major defense contractor, right? That was a role that didn't exist. Most of my roles didn't exist when I got into them. And I built a team and built those roles based on my passion for doing what I do.
You see, Omar, that's the track right there, auditing, cyber auditing. You do that type of auditing, so you'll know everything about how that organization is working, good, bad, and indifferent, just from the audit perspective. Anyway, Gerald, thanks again, man. So good to see and talk with you again. I appreciate everyone that came today. Please look at the link that I think I put that link in. Oh, I don't want to do that. I put a link into the chat for, there it is there. I put that link in the chat so that everyone can just add a comment. Please do add a comment. Please do give us a review. And thanks for coming. Next month, right? Next month, we're going to be speaking with, let me see if I could find it. We're going to be speaking with, it's going to be Women's History Month next week. Women's History Month. And next month, we're going to be speaking with Trina
Hill.
Yeah.
Trina Hill.
Trina Hill, correct. Look at that. Darrell even knows, Darrell knows her as well. So here, just going to put this up so you guys can see it. Oh my goodness, there it is. Come on, pop up. There you go. Trina Hill, she's the Senior Vice President from Synchrony Financial's Technology, Consumer Bank and Treasury Division. That's in March. By mistake there, I made an error there. But in March and April was going to be Dr. Lewis Pate. He's the director for a SOC for CACI, which is a government contract down in Herndon. Excuse the error there on the screen. But next month we'll be speaking with a diversity champion in Trina Hill, and the month after that we'll be speaking with Dr. Lewis Pate, who runs a SOC. So SOC being the SOC being the entry point for many folks. This is a good conversation with a person who runs one of those SOCs, who makes sure that all of the the security coverage at the front door is always taken care of. And so so thanks again, everyone. Thanks for joining, and I'll be on for a couple of minutes if there are any additional questions. But Dr. Darrell, thanks again. Thanks again.
Thank you all for joining. I really appreciate. I know it's a Saturday afternoon and we all have stuff to do, so I really appreciate the attendance.
I'm serious. I'm serious. Thanks for taking the time on a Saturday, Darrell. Hey, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right, Akelo, you got any other questions, man?
No, it was just basically that thing of the scholarship because it was disturbing me seriously. Because I
Yeah.
tried the Sons Institute and they're talking of people in the US only. Other than
Oh,
that,
really?
yeah. Other than that, there's really nothing much. I'm enjoying the mentorship. Actually connected with you on LinkedIn.
So do you have a
So
mentor?
yes, Dan Glass.
Okay, Dan Glass, right.
Yeah. So
And
we have so far had like 2 sessions, but we're having also another one this week. Yes, but
good.
it's going on well.
Good. Hey,
Yeah.
Gregory, you're still around. Do you have a question, sir? Bev, you're back. How you? Greg, do you have a question? No? All right, okay. Look at, hey, Bev.
Fun fact, here it's
Say it again.
11:30, 11:28 it's PM.
It's 11:28 where you are?
Yeah, PM.
Ooh, you're a trooper, but thanks for coming too, Okelo. Appreciate it very
You're
much.
Hey, David.
You're going in and out, Bev. There you go. I know she has something to
I'm
say.
sorry, David. Yeah, I'm out on the road.
Oh, great. Hey, Bev, thanks for coming. I didn't call on you.
You talking to me, David? No.
Yes, I am talking to you. I said, thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thank you for coming.
I appreciate you so much. You
Right, I did it. Hey, Okelo, I'm going.
and thank you, Darrell.